What is up, guys? Coming from the KO podcast. Today we are talking about the NBA. One thing every team needs to do in the offseason right after this. Once again, my name is Kevin Barral from the KO podcast. Remember to like and subscribe to our channel and follow us on all our social medias, which include the Instagram, Facebook, Twitch, and Twitter. Let's start with our first team, which is the Atlanta Hawks. The Atlanta Hawks need to bring in a backup point guard to back up Trae Young. So options are Jeff Teague, Goran Dragic, and Fred VanVleet. Jeff Teague was on the team last year. He had his little comeback. Then we have Goran Dragic, which is probably the top point guard in this free agency class. And then you have Fred VanVleet, who absolutely dominated the free agency. And we also need to bring in a backup center. The Hawks have to bring in a backup center because Clint Capella cannot do it all. So some options are Enes Kanter, Aaron Baines, and Mason Plumlee. Out of those three, I would say Baines is the biggest on this team. Now with our next team, we're going to go with the Boston Celtics. The Boston Celtics need to draft a young center to develop. Some options are Isaiah Stewart, Vernon Carey Jr., and Reggie Perry. Out of these three, who is the most likely to fall to the Celtics at 14? And in my mock draft, I have him actually taking Isaiah Stewart, and that's the one I think will fall to them. Personally, I think Isaiah Stewart is probably the best, underrated center in this draft, if you want to say, because there's not many good centers in the draft besides Emeka Okongwu. Or you could go out in free agency, maybe see what you could side with me and Paul Millsap, and that's where I come to my next topic, which is the Celtics need a power forward. Some options are Jeremy Grant, Paul Millsap, Bobby Portis. These are guys who are getting older. Besides Jeremy Grant, he's in his prime, you could say. But at the end of the day, for Jeremy Grant or any of these guys, is the contract. The contract is going to lower. The value is going to go down, money-wise, not their value. But money-wise, Paul Millsap, you could sign him to a $10 million a year deal, or $7 to $10 million. And then we have Bobby Portis, you could sign for maybe $10 to $12 million, which is not bad for Boston. Then we go to Brooklyn. What do the Brooklyn Nets need to do? The first thing I think they need to do is bring back Joe Harris. He has been great for the Brooklyn Nets. Then they need to find a clear-cut power forward. They have not had a consistent power forward. Again, the options, Jeremy Grant, Paul Millsap, Bobby Portis, or Marcus Morris. My preferable option here would be Marcus Morris. He played really good for the Lakers. And actually, it was Markieff who played really good for the Lakers. And then you also have Marcus Morris, the other twin brother, who plays for the Clippers. Really good player. These guys are really good. We're going to move on to the Charlotte Hornets. They need to find the center of the future, and obviously the choice would be James Wiseman. But they don't have the I think they have the third pick, so they would have to go on top of the Warriors. Unless the Warriors want to swap picks, they take Wiseman. But if they do not wind up with Wiseman, you could also have a guy like free agency period who could try to prove out there to be the center of the future. Now we're going to move on to a team that really has a future, has good players, which are the Chicago Bulls. The Chicago Bulls, they need to define their starting five for a clear future. Now, as of right now, my starting five would be Kobe White at the point guard, Zach LaVine at the shooting guard, Otto Porter Jr. at the small forward, at your power forward, Lauri Markkanen, and at your center, Wendell Carter. Now, as I said in my mock draft, I have him taking Anthony Edwards. I think Anthony Edwards could be that replacement in there at small forward. And then my second thing that I have for Chicago is define the bench and your backup players. Because this team has a good starting five. That is the playoff starting five, playoff caliber starting five. They live up to what they have to play or live up to expectations. If you bring in bench players like Dragic, maybe you get some young, not young guys. You get first-year vets or second-year vets. You'll be good. Now our next team is a team that won a championship just a couple of years ago. Came back 3-1 to Cleveland Cavaliers. The first thing they have to do is get rid of Kevin Love. Trade destinations are the Miami Heat, Portland Trailblazers, Celtics, and the Mavericks, all teams that are looking to contend and are kind of in the same situation. Now, the Miami Heat would be a good destination, but what would they give up? Maybe a guy like Kendrick Nunn, but they wouldn't want a point guard. So what would Cleveland want in this scenario is what comes down with the Miami Heat. The Blazers possibly are the best fit here. What would the Blazers need to give up now? You could give up some young talent, maybe a guy like Zach Collins if you really want to win right away. But that wouldn't be bad. Or you could trade Whiteside if you resign like a signing trade. For the Celtics, you could give maybe away Grant Williams or one of your centers, maybe Daniel Tice. That would work for the Cavs, even though possibly Grant Williams or Romeo Langford would be the best option there, even though you have Kevin Porter on the Cavs, but a backup role wouldn't be bad. And then you have the Mavericks. The Mavericks are a team that I threw in there because that is a team who is probably looking into for Giannis Antetokounmpo. We'll get more into that later along with that. And then, yeah, find your center for the future. Your two options are re-signing Drummond or going for Montrezl Harrell. I think Montrezl Harrell would be the perfect fit in Cleveland. That would be the future of that team. And then with the case of Drummond's going into a point where he is no longer fitting into this era of the three-point shooting center. And he's not fitting into that unless he absolutely dominates and starts shooting threes. That's the only way I would see it happening. Now we're going to move on to the Dallas Mavericks. Really all they need to do is find a backup point guard, and I put Fred VanVleet, Goran Dragic, and the draft. Now, in my mock draft, you guys saw that I put R.J. Hampton to go to the Mavericks. That would be a good spot. He could play if he fell that deep. He probably will. He's not going to go top 10, top 15. He's probably going right to the Mavericks or a little bit lower. But yeah, I mean, some other options, of course, for Fred VanVleet and Goran Dragic. I like those options for the Mavericks. I think they would help them. And obviously, I think the best one would be Dragic, since they already eyed on him. They had traded for him, in fact, and it didn't go through. Next team is the Denver Nuggets. Because I'm pretty sure Jokic right now is playing a power forward. Now you have some options. You can go into the draft. You can bring in Hassan Whiteside or Marcus Gasol. Those are guys whose values have probably dropped money-wise. Marcus Gasol because he's getting old, and Whiteside because he does not fit with this NBA era. And now we're going to come into the team with the most necessities and the most needs. As you see, it's not really one thing. It's just, I guess you could say a little bit of clickbait. I don't know. But, yeah, I mean, it's mainly two, at most three, which we only have one team, I think, with three things, which are the Detroit Pistons. You need to draft LaMelo Ball, and you need a backup point guard. Of course, some options for Dragic and VanVleet. And finally, you need to trade away Derrick Rose and Blake Griffin. There's no way those guys can stay on this team for much longer. You trade away Griffin, you might get some good value back. Of course, trade destinations. Probably almost the same ones as Kevin Love, except you could add the Denver Nuggets, which is a team who's looking into maybe a power forward to pair up with Jokic. And yeah, I mean, the Derrick Rose situation is pretty much like, I mean, if you want to develop LaMelo Ball with Derrick Rose, you go and you develop LaMelo Ball with Derrick Rose. If not, you could sign a point guard like VanVleet for a year to develop LaMelo and then let him go. The next team is the team who is going to be very, very scary in this year in the NBA. We have the Golden State Warriors. This is pretty much all they need to do. It's not much. Draft James Wiseman with the second overall pick if it's not Obi Toppin. And then you go out and you revamp your bench with Paul Millsap. You could bring in a guy like Paul Millsap or Jeff Teague, which this team does need a point guard. They don't have good backup unless you want to consider Kai Bowman as a good backup. Yeah, but besides that, you don't have much to bring to back up Stephen Curry and Klay Thompson. So yes, this is why I would say Jeff Teague is a good option. Another good option, of course, Paul Millsap at the power forward spot to replace Draymond Green when he's out or he's for this one, but I think it's true. You trade Russell Westbrook and James Harden to acquire a draft pick, which this is where I'm going with. The Houston Rockets need to acquire a draft pick. They don't have one this year. I'll go through my mock draft. They don't have a single one. They have it. Bam, ba-bam, ba-bam. No draft pick. So this is a team who might be needing a draft pick and I think should go into rebuild mode, especially after Daryl Morey is gone and Mike D'Antoni. Move on to the Indiana Pacers. There's only one thing this team really needs to figure out, and it's the future of the team. You bring in a rookie head coach, and you don't know what Victor Oladipo is going to be. This is not a bad team by any means, even though they got swept by the Miami Heat. This is not a bad team. Injuries really changed up the series. I expected it at the time to be a 5 to 6 game series. It didn't happen, but it was a sweep. For the Clippers, you just re-sign Montrezl Harrell, and yes, explore trades for Paul George. Explore. Remind you guys, I said explore. Why did I say explore? because this team might be able to get a superstar back for Paul George or get a lot of assets because he is really drafted. They did a single draft pick this year in the draft because of the trade for Paul George. They traded draft picks. Now our next team are the NBA champions, the Los Angeles Lakers. Yeah, pretty much just bring back Rondo and KCP and bring in young talent because this Los Angeles team reminds me a lot of the Miami Heat, the LeBron Miami Heat, the Heatles. That team was old, and you knew that wasn't going to last for much longer than it did, just because of the age of those players. And you look at the Lakers, your only really young players are Anthony Davis, maybe, Quinn Cook. You have the guy you drafted last year. And then you also have Kyle Kuzma. So there's not much young talent there. So that's why I say go through the draft and go for undrafted players. And second round, too. And then we're going to go to the Memphis Grizzlies. Only one thing they got to do. You got to bring in support for Ja Morant. If you do not bring support for Ja, you got a problem. We got problems here in Memphis, and they might not even make it to the playoffs. They're one game away. They made it technically to the playoffs, but they lost in the seeding games. Next team, the Miami Heat. This one might be a longer one because I am a Heat fan, and I love to talk about the Heat. So as you can see there, I put re-sign Dragic and Crowder and get a center. Now, as a center, I said Vernon Carey Jr. would be a good option if Miami, surprisingly, Isaiah Stewart falls to them. I'm going Isaiah Stewart. There have been rumors about Trey Jones possibly coming to Miami and Wesley Matthews. What can I say? I don't like the Wesley Matthews rumor. Not because I don't like Wesley Matthews. But it gets to the point where, what about Tyler Hero? What about Duncan Robinson? What about Kendrick Nunn? Now, I did see an article. Not an article. I saw a video, and they were talking about the possibility of getting DeMar DeRozan. Now, there I would say, let's trade Kendrick Nunn, Kelly Olynyk in a sign-and trade for DeMar DeRozan. I would love that move. I think that fits perfectly for them. Yeah, and then my second half was drafting a center. I said Isaiah Stewart, Vernon Carey, who is the guy most likely to fall to the Heat. The Milwaukee Bucks. The Milwaukee Bucks need to play Giannis. And there's another way to say it. I mean, Giannis, if you want to keep Giannis, which I don't want Giannis to stay in Milwaukee, I want him to come to Miami, but if you really want to keep Giannis, it gets to the point where you have to say, who do you want on this team, Giannis? Like, what do you want on this team? Who do you think would be the best fit with you? And who do you think you would play well with to win a championship? And then my second part of it was bringing in and trading away Bledsoe, drafting a point guard. That's probably one of the biggest needs for this Milwaukee team, getting a young point guard to develop because George Hill is getting old. Bledsoe's not playoff Bledsoe. I mean, he's not really that good in the playoffs. So it gets to a point where you tell yourself, what do I have to do to bring in a young guy? And that might be trading Bledsoe, getting rid of the cap, and bringing in a young point guard. The Minnesota Timberwolves draft Obi Toppin and solve the shooting guard situation. There's an issue with Malik Beasley. It is legal issues, so we're not going to get into that. But yeah, Minnesota needs a shooting guard. You got to sign one in free agency. Who would be the best option? You could go after a point guard that could play shooting guard as well. Jeff Teague is not that at all. And then, yeah, Obi Toppin, I think he's the consensus number one overall pick in this case just because of what Minnesota needs. The New York Knicks, yeah, I actually have three things for the Knicks. So they have to draft correctly because as of right now, it's looking like RJ Barrett's an absolute bust. Grab one of the top free agents and trade Julius Randle. Now, the trade Julius Randle could go either way. I really don't mind if he stays because the Knicks do have a lot of caps, so they should be able to bring in a good player. Now, a rumor was Paul George possibly getting traded, and you could even say, hey, let's go out there and let's see what Anthony Davis wants, even though he said he's going to re-sign. You talk to him. You try to at least talk to him or entice him to come to the Knicks. And you could also say, hey, I mean, let's go after a player like DeMar DeRozan. DeMar DeRozan's a good player. He could come to the Knicks and be a superstar for this team. The Oklahoma City Thunder define if we want to keep Chris Paul or not. This is something we have been seeing a lot. What are the Thunder going to do with Chris Paul? If Danilo Gallinari does not return, I'm not expecting Chris Paul to return, and I'm not expecting Steven Adams, and I'm expecting a trade of Steven Adams or Chris Paul, or both of them, most likely both of them. And anyways, this team really wants to rebuild. This was a good season for the Thunder. They got all the way to the first round of the playoffs in 7 games, lost because of a block shot of James Harden. Move on to our next team, the Orlando Magic. You want to trade Vucevic to make Mo Bamba the clear-cut center on this team. The trade destinations are Denver and Milwaukee. The most likely out of the two, honestly, is Denver because Milwaukee doesn't have many pieces. And then you're going to sign the top free agent. This has been a problem for the Magic for a while. You have not been able to sign top-tier free agents. And I understand this is not a bad Orlando team. They beat Milwaukee. They beat a game against Milwaukee, which is surprising. But, yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you look at this and you say, the Orlando Magic, they're not a bad team. They've made the playoffs 2 years in a row. All that's left for them is really to bring in a top free agent, like a superstar, like a DeMar DeRozan kind of player, which actually I like the fit of DeMar DeRozan on this team. Maybe even go after Chris Paul. Chris Paul would be a good player you back up. You don't back up Fultz, but this reminds me of kind of the OKC Thunder team if you bring in Chris Paul. Or even Danilo Gallinari. Move on with the Philadelphia 76ers. You have to define the future of this team. Find a point guard. Really, my only option would be Jeff Teague since you're kind of tight on cap. Now, what I mean by define the future is, in this scenario, is what are you going to do with Philadelphia? Like, you know, are you going to keep Joel Embiid? Are you going to keep Ben Simmons? Are you going to keep both? Are you going to trade one of them? And honestly, if I'm trading one of them, I'm trading Joel Embiid, not because he's a bad player by any means, because I think he'll bring back more assets. And Ben Simmons is, I think, a young player, if I'm correct. So it would help out more. And Joel Embiid, I think, is a little bit more injury prone. Phoenix Suns get a point guard through the free agency or the draft. This one's kind of obvious. I think they're going to get Cole Anthony. If they do, they have their point guard of the future and Ricky Rubio to back them up. Now we have 6 more teams, but before we do that, I want to remind you guys again to like and subscribe to the video. To the channel, and like the video, of course. And tap the bell button once you do all of that so you can get notified when we're live. Today, this is filmed the day before our live stream, but will be posted to the day of the live stream. So yes, go to our live stream today, October 30th, with Octavio Sequeira talking all sports, NBA, MLB, NHL, NFL, MLS. And follow us on all our social media so you also stay notified when that happens. Final, the 3 teams right here, these are all defined future teams. Portland, are you going to rebuild or are you going to go for it? If you're going to go for it, go and try to get Kevin Love and try to see what you're going to do with that center spot. Sacramento Kings, defined future. Are you going to go for it or are you going to keep rebuilding? I think this is a team who should truly go for it. They have a good team. They have a good young core of Buddy Hield, De'Aaron Fox. Are you going to bring back Bojan Bogdanovic? If you are, yes, you might go out and compete. And then the San Antonio Spurs, define the future because this is a team who you're telling yourself, hey, what are you going to do? You know, are you going to go for it? Which it looked like they were, but this wasn't the team to go with it. Or are you going to not go for it? I mean, this team has DeMar DeRozan as of now and LaMarcus Aldridge as of now. And then our final 3 teams, which I didn't make a little thumbnail for them, were the Toronto Raptors, which I think should absolutely go for it. This is the team right now to beat, honestly, in the East besides the Miami Heat. This is a team who I think could have knocked the Heat out. But at the end of the day, they didn't. And they should go out there and try to bring back Serge Ibaka, who's a good player for them. And then you have the Utah Jazz. This is one of the most complete teams in the NBA besides the Miami Heat, in my opinion. Again, I'm not trying to be biased. I'm trying to be serious. The Miami Heat have a complete roster, have a complete depth of bench. Utah did not have that. I think they should go for a point guard. Utah Jazz should go for a point guard and maybe explore trade options for Rudy Gobert if the situation with the chemistry is still bad. And then my final team, we have the Washington Wizards. Define your future, but don't define it at the same time because this is a good team at the end of the day. Rui Hachimura, you have to be Brian. And then at small forward, it depends who you bring in. This is a good Washington team. Like what they do. Guys, thank you for watching the video. Hope you like and subscribe to the channel, of course. Remember, we will be live today, October 30th. At 7 p.m. with Octavio Sequeira. I want to see at least 100 of you in that live. Thank you guys for watching. See you all in the next one. Peace out.